How do you know if you have emotional trauma? What's the difference between emotional trauma and physical trauma? And how do you deal carrying that with you to have, the life that you actually want to have, to thrive instead of just surviving? I'm here to help. This is Ask a Therapist, Mended Light. So when I was in school, to become a therapist, we talked a lot about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's defined as having experienced a physical trauma, right? Either an assault or an attack or an act of violence or a near-death experience or a serious injury or a grave illness or witnessing something like that happening to somebody else. But it's always like a physical threat of death or violence or something like that. And because of this, in a lot of psychological circles, emotional trauma is discounted or seen as lesser. Now, obviously not if it's emotional abuse, but we often don't look at anything beyond that as traumatic. But what is trauma? You've probably heard me say that it's believing that your world is safe and then discovering that it's not. And that's true most of the time. Some of the time, your world was never safe. You were born into abuse. You were born into where you weren't wanted, where you were unloved, where you were neglected, or where you were loved as much as this person knew how, but you were just terribly mistreated. So it's not always your world was safe and then you discover that it's not. So what is trauma? It is something that is so disturbing and distressing that later you are triggered. And what does that mean? It means that reminders of the trauma cause panic, cause anxiety, cause intense sadness or grief or fear or depression, lead to an intense negative emotional response that you don't want to be having, right? That's a trauma. The trigger sets that off. It could be a smell, it could be a sound, it could be a memory, a picture, it could be a video. It could be a movie that takes you back to what was going on in your time, that time in your life. It could be a taste. It could be a series of words. It could be almost anything could be a trigger, as long as it reminds you of something that caused you such distress that you now experience intense emotional turmoil. In order for something to be a trauma, there's triggers, and as a result, there's avoidance of triggers, right? Whether by completely avoiding situations or circumstances where we can see, hear, taste, or smell, or remember these types of things, whether it's pushing out thoughts of the past or replacing them with something else, or whether it's intensely working to change your life so that the negative things don't happen to you again, right? Whatever form it takes, it's avoidance of the trigger because you don't want to have to go through that. A type of hypervigilance also follows trauma. Hypervigilance is you're always on edge. You don't really feel safe. You're on the lookout for when the other shoe's going to drop, when the penny's going to fall, when bad things are going to happen again, when you're going to get hurt, when you're going to get abused. Now, we often tie this to the physical, as I said before, physical acts of violence or threats of violence or death or assault or things, or danger or disease or things like that. And then emotionally, we tie it to verbal and emotional abuse. But honestly, loss is traumatic. Whether it's loss due to death, loss due to divorce or breakup, or the dissolution of a friendship or a relationship, that can be traumatic. Having your heart broken can be traumatic, especially if you invested your hopes and dreams for the future in another person. And if you think I'm being dramatic by saying that's traumatic, the fact is there are varying degrees of trauma. I've been traumatized by breakups that were nasty. I've been traumatized by breakups that were healthy breakups, but it was just devastating because I really wanted that relationship. And as I said, there's varying degrees of trauma. Within 2 years when I was in college, I was dating somebody that I wanted to marry, and it was a healthy breakup, but it didn't work out. And it took me half a year to get over the depression of it. It took me half a year. If I smelled her perfume on somebody else, I passed by places that we spent time together, sometimes I would just cry. I would avoid reminders. I would avoid memories. And I would avoid getting into relationships again because I didn't want to go through that sort of pain or grief once more. That was traumatic. 2 years later, my mom died. This is the breakup. This is my mom dying, both traumatic, or if we're looking at a spectrum, this is the breakup and this is my mom dying. I mean, there's varying degrees. And you don't need to say that something wasn't traumatic because you're comparing it to something far worse. Losing my mom was traumatic. It would be a mistake for me to say, well, I wasn't in a concentration camp in the Holocaust and I didn't lose all my family. Or I haven't ever been around when a genocide was happening, right? Or I haven't experienced this or that. It's not the Olympics of suffering. A trauma is a trauma. Does it cause distress? Such distress that you experience depressive symptoms or anxiety or grief or sadness or fear to the point that it interrupts your daily life and keeps you from doing the things that you want to do, or at least thriving and doing them the very best you can. That's a trauma. No matter what it is, you don't need to minimize it. Do you avoid reminders? Do you experience hypervigilance? All of these things are indicators that even if you haven't experienced a physical threat, even if it's not tied to a physical threat or danger, it could still be traumatic. So how do we work through this? A blow-by-blow is beyond the scope of this video. It is our mission here at Mended Light to help people through their traumas. The first thing is to recognize that you've experienced a trauma, to not minimize or compare. The second thing is to get a healthy support system, is to not carry it alone. I know so many people who don't want to trouble their loved ones, their family, their friends. They don't want to be a burden. But that's why we have loved ones, to burden the hell out of them. But that's why we have loved ones. That's why we have relationships, so that we can be there for one another, so that we can support one another during our darkest hours. My mom had health problems for 15 years before she passed away, the full extent of which I never really knew. Obviously she couldn't hide all of it, and I knew stuff was going on. But I was a teenager and I was in my 20s, and I remember being angry with her while she was still alive and angry with her after she died, that she didn't want to burden her kids, that she didn't want us to worry, so she wouldn't tell us things. And I remember telling her, Mom, I'm not a child anymore. I mean, that's probably a good mentality if you're dealing with a child, because a child can't really be there for you, and they're just gonna worry and they'll feel helpless. But once I'm a teenager, once I'm an adult, it's okay to talk to me. Tell me what you're suffering. Tell me what you're struggling with. Even if I can't do anything other than just be here for you, mourn with you, comfort you, right? And maybe there's things I can do, because I can drive now. I can run errands. There's things I can do, right? And she kept it to herself because she didn't want to burden us. And that always made me really sad, because she denied me the opportunity to serve her, to support her, to lift her the way she had done for me so many times. When you are afraid of being a burden to the people in your life, look at it the other way. True loved ones want to be there for you. Yes, they have stuff going on. So what? That doesn't mean they need to carry you or you need to be inconsiderate and completely interrupt their life flow. But a text or a phone call saying, hey, I'm struggling. No rush. Do you have 10 minutes we could talk sometime today or tomorrow? I guarantee they'll find 10 minutes, right? Today or tomorrow, more often than not, they can find 10 minutes. A good friend of mine texted me and said, can you keep me in your prayers? I'm having a hard day. He didn't say, drop what you're doing. He didn't say, hey, can we go have lunch right now? He just said, can you keep me in your prayers? And I did. But then I also went and took him out for sushi. But that was my call, right? You never know the people in your life, what they can do for you. Now, some of you are watching this and you say, I've tried reaching out for support. I've got an emotional trauma and I don't want to go through it alone. And the people in my life don't understand. They don't think it's something to make time for. If that's the case, I'm very sorry. This is why there are therapy groups. This is one of the reasons why there are therapy groups, both online and in your community. You can also reach out to us or in our Mended Light community, in our groups, on our social media. There are people, and we'll put links for those groups below. There are people in our groups in the Mended Light community who are going through similar things to what you're going through. They can give you advice, they can give you feedback, they can give you counsel. Sometimes from strangers is the best thing. The next thing, recognize that you've experienced a trauma, reach out to friends and family and loved ones for support, is get professional support. The fact is, the more you avoid your triggers, the more power you give them. The more afraid of something you are, the more power you give it. Facing things head on is uncomfortable and unpleasant and scary, but it also gives you power and strength. You wonder what else you can do, what else you can accomplish, what else you can pull off, what else you can face. And the things that you confront get smaller and smaller and smaller, and your power to handle them increases. And you may need a counselor's support to do that. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments below. How do you manage your emotional trauma? What do you do to cope? How do you recognize that it is a trauma? What are you struggling with right now, and how can we help you? Also, what would you like me to answer? This is Ask a Therapist, so ask me a question. Let me know in the comments below, what would you like me to address in one of these videos? Now, today we've talked about how do you know if you've had emotional trauma. I want to direct you to how do you know if you've got trauma, period. The broader umbrella. Check out this video right here. As always, keep shining because we need your light. I'm Jonathan Decker, licensed therapist, and this is Ask a Therapist. We'll see you next time. Here it comes. Come on, ride the train and ride it. Woo, woo. The trauma train? I don't think, actually nobody wants to get aboard the trauma train. This is not my best work. But here's the video I was telling you about, so go ahead and click on it.